So let's talk about House of the Dragon Season 1. Now, it's fair to say House of the Dragon has brought Westeros back to HBO, back to the people, the viewers, in a way that has captured the eagerness, the satisfaction, the glory of early Game of Thrones. Really, with episode 1, there's that moment with Daemon Viserys in the throne room talking about Otto Hightower, and that for me just pulled me back in straight away. I mean, I think sort of before episode 1 aired, I was aware that, I mean, even with the latter seasons of Game of Thrones, things like nudity and that sort of took a back seat, and it's not a problem. I mean, yes, it was risque and sort of, I don't know, titillating in the early seasons, and that follows sort of a progression of TV shows which you can probably trace back to Rome. Then we got Game of Thrones. I don't think Game of Thrones would ever have been possible without Rome, to something like Black Sails, which for me, as a quick mention, remains sort of the one show that has a perfect ending. If you haven't seen Black Sails, make time to watch it. But I'm not talking about Black Sails, I'm talking about House of the Dragon Season 1. So, episode 1 pulls you back in. Pulls you back in a way where it's just that sort of, all right, okay. Want to watch? Oh, it's back. Let's watch it. And I think sort of over the course of the 10 episodes, everything builds nicely. I mean, I'm quite interested in watching the whole season again, and just to sort of see threads that probably run together throughout all 10 episodes to take more notice of them. There's no bad episode. All I would say is sort of the first half of the season really is setting the scene and showing you quirks and that when the characters are younger, they sort of hold on to and carry through to the latter half of the season, when we know we're heading towards sort of a car crash, which is great. I say there are moments that you can pick from each episode, and I found very much sort of Matt Smith has been a revelation in his character as Daemon. Very much a scene stealer, except in episode 8, which I consider to be probably the best episode of the season and as good as any of the great episodes of Game of Thrones. Paddy Considine as Viserys is flawless in his portrayal of King Viserys, and it really sort of, while that's not the car crash, it's kind of the driver. Sort of caught in an accident. But the episode itself was just sort of set so many things up. Now, if we go back, I think probably the start of this year, maybe before Christmas, I also made a video about House of the Dragon being a love letter to Michael Moorcock and his works, his legendary works of Elric of Melniboné, his sort of most famous incarnation of the Eternal Champion. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute as well, because I haven't really done any reviews of episodes 9 and 10. But I'm going to kind of do that now, is like with a season overview. Episode 9, again, you had sort of some really great intrigue, and you're seeing sort of, I don't know, sad actions people don't want to take, as well as callous actions that have been plotted and planned. And sort of really, when we get to the end, we've got sort of Princess Rhaenys having her boss moment. I mean, that was so phenomenal to see. And it's been interesting sort of seeing people go, well, she should have had a dragon burn all those people. And yeah, there's a logic to it, but there's a logic that is not, or does not engage with the characters' perceptions and the characters' motivations. And it's not the characters being stupid in no way whatsoever. It is the characters being their characters and being true to their traits. And obviously, once we get into episode 10, the explanation is given for those that are sort of, I know, wondering why. And obviously, we get to episode 10 where it's sort of as the writers and directors have said, it is the reverse of episode 9. Episode 9 and 10 are sister episodes. They are Alicent and Rhaenyra's episodes. And it just ends in a way that sets up season 2 with you going, I want season 2 now. Give it to me now. Now I've got the opportunity to read the book. I've had the book since it came out. I haven't read it. That's a George R.R. Martin thing, because I've been in this world for quite a few years, and like many people, probably doubting whether they'd watch House of the Dragon, I'm kind of like that with the books, because I want to read the rest of The Song of Ice and Fire. And it's been a long 10 years since A Dance of Dragons, which is a disappointing book in many ways. Personal opinion. It's just that sort of, you may think different, and that is okay. But it's just that sort of, you've been drawn back in and want to see season 2. Because really, what we see in the final section of the finale is probably what we're going to be seeing a lot of in season 2. Overall, the show has done splendidly. They've handled things like time jumps and changes of actors playing the same character, or introducing new characters in ways where, for the most part, they've been quite memorable. And it would be, I feel, weary of bashing Rings of Power for what it's done and what it could have been. So I've ranted enough on other videos. It's House of the Dragon have shown that you can treat an audience with respect and explain things with, sometimes in some simple ways and sometimes in other more complex ways, because in particular with Game of Thrones, they create moments that people want to talk about. So the one thing I do want to talk about in closing, and it's not necessarily a negative, it's more a case of, please, please, please acknowledge the genius of Michael Moorcock. going back to my video that House of the Dragon is a love letter to Michael Moorcock and Elric and Mel Nebone. Well, if you're thinking Aemond looks pretty cool with that jewel in his eye, that in itself is maybe deliberately, maybe not deliberately. It's also like another call to a character, an aspect of the Eternal Champion that Michael Moorcock has already written. In that, it's the character Coram, who in his series of books is elvish of sorts. And in his character arc, his first book, he is captured, he has a hand cut off, he has an eye put out, and in the process of going through his story, spoilers a little bit, he gets a magical hand. He also gets a jewel in his eye. Now, this jewel in his eye lets him see into other worlds, other possibilities and stuff. So he gets two magical items. But here we have, character with a jewel in his eye. And maybe that's a loose term. Maybe it's loose referencing. It's close. It's close enough that I would love to see some acknowledgement to the works of Michael Moorcock and their influences. As a prolific writer, he did a lot of his writing in the 60s and 70s. He's still writing now. And he is sort of genius. The thing that first attracted me to his books were they were easy reads. I wasn't born when he was dropping books left, right and centre, but obviously I've had the time to read them, and it's just sort of ideas and ideas and ideas, and maybe some of them are rehashing ideas, classic sort of tropes if you like, but on the other hand, I've always found, like with Clive Barker, early Clive Barker, that you're reading these books and they've got a freshness to them. Something that might take you a little bit unexpected. I'd always say one of the things for perhaps why I love Michael Moorcock's books so much is I first read The Sailor on the Seas of Fate after the first time I read Lord of the Rings. So obviously, Lord of the Rings, you've got, 5 pages to make a journey. And Michael Moorcock did that in that one paragraph or one sentence because he was telling his story and the journey wasn't necessarily so important. It's fair to say that they've perhaps adopted that with Rings of Power, the show I said I wasn't going to talk about. It shouldn't be an issue. Certainly with Game of Thrones, we got sort of teleportation almost, sort of cutting out travel. It's just good sometimes to serve the story by letting characters be slowed down by the circumstances of travel rather than dropping characters into moments of stupidity. At no point really have I felt with House of the Dragon that there's been any character that sort of made a glaringly stupid decision that seems out of character. The characters have been pretty solid. I also think they've done a good job of sort of presenting the two factions in as equal a light as possible. Obviously, people are always going to have their favourites one way or another. Logic or passion dictating. I still feel undecided. I'll say, for me, I love Daemon. I think he's he's a terribly brilliant character in that obviously he's not someone you'd really ask to babysit for you. But on the other hand, sort of, you get into a difficult situation, he's probably the sort of person who will just throw himself in and help you. So he's very much an all or nothing character. And I think Matt Smith portrays him brilliantly. And I don't know, I don't have one faction that I sit on sort of the side of, either Greens or Blacks. They've got a lot of negative qualities to them. I suppose that's the thing in seeing the tragedy unfold, the mistakes that have been made. I mean, at this stage, I suppose I would say Rhaenyra is the official heir, and anyone who's breaking the line of succession is the bad guy. However, obviously, as we see through the course of the season, she's kind of made a few rods for her own back on something that was always going to be a difficult thing to hold on to, without the mistakes she has made in trying to forge a life that she could be happy with. So I suppose it brings us back to what Aemon says, Maester Aemon says in Castle Black, sort of like, love is the death of duty and duty is the death of love. And I think we're very much seeing that is the underlying sort of thread for all the characters really in House of the Dragon. And it's delivered. It's I imagine HBO are very happy. And I think people, certainly from the circles I'm in, people are more infused and keen to see the season 2 of House of the Dragon than a season 2 of another show. It's going to be a long wait. Maybe Winds of Winter might be out by then. That's something I won't hold my breath for. I do want to read it. But I think I accepted a long time ago that might not happen, and that is sad. But there we go, never mind. That's my review of season 1 of House of the Dragon. Very, very good. So for me, episode 8, as good as any of the best episodes of Game of Thrones, and has really, really made the cut. Good job. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.